The Schoology assessment tool can be used in many ways throughout your course. Along with summative assessments, you can use this tool to create quick formative assessments, to have activities like do nows or exit tickets, to have your students practice with warm-up questions, or even to do homework questions. You can even create self-assessments for students to take so that they are able to reflect on their learning of a lesson. The assessment tool is going to offer you a variety of question types that include both selected response questions that are going to be automatically graded, as well as constructed response questions which you can go in and grade on your own. The selected response questions do get auto-graded, and they include questions like multiple choice, true, false, matching, and ordering, and they even do leverage the ability of working with images, as students would be able to label images, click on image hotspots, and even highlight text. Constructed response is going to ask your students to engage their critical thinking abilities by coming up with their own responses to either essay questions or even to be able to upload audio and video responses. When your students are taking an assessment, you have the ability to turn on tools for your students to be able to work with as they go through specific questions. You can set up flags for students to review questions, and that's going to provide them reminders to go back and review something that they've looked at. They'll have the ability to eliminate choices in specific questions, to use text highlighting, to work with calculators, either a regular calculator or a scientific calculator, and even use rulers and protractors. To begin creating an assessment, you are going to want to go into your Schoology course, and you are going to work with the Add Materials option and choose Add Assessment from the drop-down. The first step of this process is going to be able to create your assessment and provide basic information. So we might want to come in here and give this a title. And then the next important piece of information is going to be able to set a due date. Putting a due date means that this is going to display on the student's calendar and in their upcoming feed. So you can go in and put in a due date and a time that you would like this to be scheduled for. You can come in here and you can select a point value. By default, the point value is going to be 100 points. You can always come back in and change this point value after you've set up your assessment and have determined how many questions you would like this to be. By default, the submissions are going to be disabled when you begin to create your assessment. This means that a student is going to be able to see that they have an assessment coming up, and they'll be able to click on the assessment, but they are not going to have the option available to start a new attempt. This will only be available once you enable student submissions. So enabling student submissions by clicking on the drop-down means as soon as the student clicks on this, they'll get a little message that says Start New Attempt. You do have additional options here. You can enable until, meaning you can set an end date for when the students will be able to work up until. So if I wanted this to be opened until tomorrow, I would go and set tomorrow's date and time, and they would be able to access it through that date. I can also enter a from and until time, so meaning from one day at a certain point until another day at another time they would be able to work on this assessment. By default, your passwords are disabled. You do not have to use a password, but if you did want to set up a password, you could turn a password on and you would be able to set a password here that you would then have to provide your students in order to start this assessment. You're going to need to select a category for your assessment to be in. So in this example, I'm just going to set this as a quiz. If you wanted this to be a student self-assessment, you could always keep this ungraded, or if you wanted it to be part of classwork or homework, you could choose whichever category you're comfortable with. For the period, you're going to select which semester you're in, or if it's set up on a quarterly basis, you will determine the quarter. For syncing, right now by default, this is set to sync to SIS, or a student information system, which would be PowerSchool. So if you would like this assessment to be passed back to PowerSchool, you'll keep this checked off. If it is not something that you want passed back, you will uncheck this box. By default, underneath the options, this assessment is going to automatically be published to students, meaning that they're going to be able to see that this is coming up in both their upcoming feed as well as their calendar. If you would like to keep this unpublished while you are creating your assessment, you would just toggle this off to be unpublished. One of the other options that you might want to start using is the ability to individually assign assessments to students. So if you wanted this to go to 1 or 2 students or even a student group, if you've created those, you could come in here and type the name of that group and click on them, and it would assign this to that group. Once you're all finished with this, you are going to click on the Create button, and this is going to create your assessment and bring you to the next part, which will be working on the assessment setup and starting to add in any questions. So in the next video, we're going to focus on your setup of the assessment, and then we will follow that by how to create various question types.